Welcome, everybody. We're due to hear today from the Tūranga Waiwai Trust Board. Mr. Donald and Ms. Romati, should we just pass it over to you and take it from there?
Kia ora, good afternoon. I just need to check with...
So you have...
I just need to check if Sandra has received our presentation.
No, I haven't, Gavin.
Okay, we've had a few...
Do you want to send it to me, Gavin?
Okay,
and
I can try.
If you send it to me, I can, because I suspect it's an email size problem. If you want to try sending it to me.
If it doesn't, Gavin, I can give you sharing rights. And
oh, that's the alternative. That's better. In fact, let's do that.
So I'll allow you to share, Gavin, and then you can just open it. Do you know how to do that?
Well, I would, except we're on Hinarangi's computer, and we can try. Yep.
Okay. Right. I'll just one moment. And I'll just. So I've let you share.
Now I've got to figure out where it is. I'll just close you. Apologies for this, everyone. Oh. How about I start talking, if that's okay, because the pictures will come and maybe the kōrero, we can just keep the kōrero going.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Kei te pai? All right, well, kia ora mai tātou, tēnei te mihi kia koutou katoa. I ngā mati o te wā, moi mai rā koutou e moi, ai te kingi tu heitia, e mihi ana kia ia, me tō hoaranga tira mākau ariki, me te whare kahui ariki. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So my name is Hinarangi Raumati. I'm the chair of the Tūranga Waiwai Trust Board. And just for your information, I'm also on Te Ara Tauda and Tainui Group Holdings. So, and I'm also attending the Mana Whenua groups for the Metropolitan Wastewater Project. So, so trying to get a handle on everything happening in the Waikato, honestly. So it's a real privilege for us to be here today. We are presenting on our own behalf our submission that we made to the District Council, but also presenting in support of Waikato Tainui in the presentation that they would have made last week. We are trying to do our best to ensure that we are all aligned in terms of the kaupapa, and we will give, but we are able to give some specific examples in terms of our marae and the community that we support. So I'd like to start with Kingi Tāwhiao, if that's okay. And Kingi Tāwhiao said in the 1860s, ko āreka hanara tōku haona kaha, ko kemu reti tōku oko horoi, ko ngārua wahia tōku tūranga waiwai. So Alexandra will be a symbol of my strength of character. Alexandra is where Tāwhiao laid down his weapons and decided to stop war. Cambridge is a symbol of my wash bowl of sorrow. Cambridge is where he used to go, where he went for healing when he was in exile. and Ngaroa Wahia will be my footstool, the place where I will stand.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
I've just got, sorry to interrupt you, but I have got, you can probably see, I've got the email that Mr. Donald sent through. And if you just tell me when you want me to move down pages and so forth, I'll do that.
So we are on page 3, which is Kingi Tawhia.
I'll just get rid of this stuff on the side.
Ka pai.
Here we go.
So those words were set. So Kingi Tawhia came out of exile in 1881. So if we go to the next slide. So the Tūranga Waiwai Trust Board is the body that I'm representing today. We are a body incorporated under the Charitable Trusts Act. The original parcels of land that formed the, I guess, the initial stages of the life of the Tūranga Waiwai Marae were purchased in 1920 by Te Puia Herangi. And it was two blocks of land were purchased in those days, and now we have 7 blocks of land.
Sorry, that was my fault. Sorry.
That's okay, Phil. Thank you. But we also own the Te Puia Estate Farm, which is also on River Road. There are 5 members of the Trust Board. That's myself as Chair, Pokaia Nepia as our past immediate Chair, Tūmati Mahuta, Glenda Raumati, and Mara Tukiri. And we represent over 4,500 members in terms of the beneficial registered members of Tūranga Waiwai Marae. We go to the next slide. Ngā wā o mua, our past. Ngāti Mahuta is the hapu of the Kahuiariki and moved inland from Kāwhia in the 1500s. The final settlement area of Ngāti Mahuta is Wāhi and Huntly, Rahui Pōkeka in the north, Taupiri in the east, and Ngaroa Wahia in the south. The pā of Pōtatau Te Wherewhero was located at the point in Ngaroa Wahia, where the Waipa River meets the Waikato River, and it is here that he was crowned king in 1858. Tawhia succeeded his father and continued living in Ngaroa Wahia until it was seized in 1863, and then he spent many years in the King Country after 1863. It was Te Puia Herangi who then decided in 1920, really in the aftermath of the Spanish flu epidemic of that time, that she would move her people who had gathered with her at Te Paina to Tūranga Waiwai Marae, or to the start of Tūranga Waiwai Marae in Ngaroa Wahia. So I'm sure many of you have heard the story that what she purchased in the 1921 was an old dump site here on the banks of the river, and that's really how the marae started. It's important to know that actually we've been here for 100 years next year. So it's an important time for the marae where we are today, but it's an important reflection on 100 years of kaitiakitanga, active kaitiakitanga in Ngaroa Wahia and with the river. We go to the next page. Our present ngā wā o Naianei. This is about trying to illustrate to you how extensive our community is. So while we are a marae, we are the only marae in Ngaroa Wahia, we are the largest marae in the country. We are obviously the largest Waikato marae. But we are, I guess, more than a marae these days. Our primary kaupapa are kingitanga, the support of kingitanga, the support of our whānau here, koro neihana, regatta, the Tainui Games, and Tūranga Waiwai Pokai are some of the big events that we host. But we are also the health centre. Ngāmiro Health Centre is owned by us. It sits across the marae proper on our land and is managed and staffed by our people. We also have 2 sports clubs, the Tūrangawaia Rugby League Sports and Cultural Club and the Tūrangawaewae Whakaama Sports Club. We have 2 kohanga reo. On the marae, we have Tūrangawaewae kohanga reo, and down the road, we have Te Kahu kohanga reo. And down the road a little bit further, we have, we provide free of charge the land under the kindergarten on Edward Street. We also have our own award-winning kapahaka group, Te Pau o Mangatawhiri, which was started in the original times of Te Puia, but was reinvigorated probably 20 years ago by the young ones here at Tūrangawaewae. In terms of whairawa, so we have some commercial activities as well. Most of you will know that the marae is used for the whānau and for kingitanga, but it is also used for others to use. We make it available for others to use in terms of commercially sustaining and being able to renew and rebuild and maintain the marae as it is, as well as to share our facilities and our values and our beliefs with those who want to come and use the marae. So we haven't had many events from whānau people outside of the whānau this year, but the last event we held was the Blake Leadership Dinner for the rangatahi in October. So those are the kinds of people that reach out and ask if they can come to Tūrangawaewae. We also get lots and lots of school groups and corporate groups coming to Tūrangawaewae to use the river, to actually get on our Whakaama waka and to experience what it is to kind of have an everyday experience with the river as well. We, under whairawa there, it says Te Puia Herangi Estate Farm. So the farm estate is south of the marae on River Road. It is about 200 hectare dairy farm with a share milker in it. So that also helps to sustain us from a commercial perspective. But it is in fact the place where Te Puia lived for most of her life here at Tūrangawaewae. In terms of taiao, our environment, we take our kaitiakitanga role very, very seriously. And we have played that role, in essence, in Ngāra Wāhia since the marae was created and since before our time in terms of tawhio and pōtatau, but also since the RMA came into existence. We have acted in the mana whenua role, as we should, as tangata whenua, for all of the inquiries that require and should have cultural input. We take that role very seriously and believe that is an extension of the work that we should do in terms of protecting the interests of our whānau, the 4,500 registered members, but also the wider community who we have who we wish to succeed as much as we do, as much as we should. We also have a papakainga here. So we have a housing estate which has about 30 houses in it, from 1-bedroom kaumātua flats to 2- and 3-bedroom homes. So it's an extensive estate as well as in terms of providing housing. And I think if you look around the Tūrangawaewae marae, you'll see that actually most of the blocks around the marae are in fact the homes of our whānau. So not just the estate that we have, the papakainga, but also the surrounding area is part of the wider, I guess, papakainga of Tūrangawaewae marae. And we presented this slide to you so that you can understand how deep and how wide we are as a community within the community of Ngāra Wāhia and within the wider community of the iwi. So if we go to the next slide, then what we wanted to do was talk to you about some of our experiences as part of the whānau who live beside the river every day and experience life every day, and so that you can understand what it means to us in terms of your mahi that you are doing. So first to Whakapapa, which is the next slide. So Whakapapa is recognition of our family relationships. It gives rise to the responsibility of tangata whenua to manage and care for their environmental family. And I'm going to quote in here, in each of these slides, words from our whānau so that you can understand what it is that the river means to us. So from our whānau member, we are born into the river, we are people of the river. For generations as a people, the awa has been a source of food, healing, transport, prayer, and education. The traditions, beliefs, and rituals of the river we practice have been passed down through the generations, in which we will in turn pass on to our uri. And as a whānau member today, I can vouch for the things that we do even today. If we go over the page to relationships or whanaungatanga, a whanaungatanga is about the interrelationships between people, place, and our natural resources, ensuring that those relationships remain intact. So as an example, one of our whānau members talks about how we were taught to clean up the river just before regatta. Ngāti Tipa and Ngāti Amaru would form a line from one end of the awa up by Kirkwoods Bay and systematically clear any snags, glass, cans, and rubbish from the awa. And all the rubbish would be gathered and taken to the dump, and a big feast would be prepared up by the katipa house, where we would then celebrate the mahi that had been accomplished. I guess that speaks to how we were, in fact, doing our own cleanup as well. And it probably speaks to how the state of the river at that time. I guess we're more technical in our cleanup these days in terms of measuring discharges and things like that. In terms of mana whakahaere, if we go over the next page, we talk about rights and responsibilities. So as tangata whenua, we are very clear that we have rights, but we're also really clear that we have responsibilities to the river and to our community. So mana whakahaere entails the exercise of rights and responsibilities to ensure that the balance and mauri of the river are maintained. It is based in recognition that if we care for the river, then the river will in fact sustain us. We have always acted like we had mana whakahaere over our section of the river. Pākehā law most probably didn't back us up, but we have just done it. Maintaining the banks has been a source of pride. We have always allowed the public access to enjoy the river through the many events that we have held. And I just wanted to note as well that we have done quite a bit of restoration work on the banks of the river that we have responsibility for here at the marae. And it's good to see the fact that restoration work is working. If we go to guardianship or kaitiakitanga, prior to the land wars and resulting confiscation of Waikato lands in 1863, Waikato were the undisputed kaitiaki of the taonga, as was Tūranga Waiwai. Despite the loss, tangata whenua still have an inherited responsibility to protect and nurture natural resources. Waikato learnt and long recognised that in order for the environment to sustain life, people in turn have to protect and sustain the environment. For us, or for me, kaitiakitanga is a symbiotic relationship between the river and the people. It's our responsibility to look after the river, and the river will in turn look after us. Our ability to fulfill our role was taken away through colonisation. The river settlement has in part restored our ability to meet our obligations to our awa tupuna. I am hopeful the whole community will embrace our aspirations to restore the vitality of the river, and it's in all our interests to do so. Mauri, life force. So Mauri is the energy from which all life generates, resonating within all things throughout the environment. And I'm sure you're all aware of this. While there are intangible qualities associated with the management of the natural resources, the vitality of the Mauri can be gauged through the assessment of the health and well-being of ecosystems, natural resources, and the resilience of relationships between people, our culture, and the environments. So as one of our whānau members said, it's the Mauri of the river that protects and sustains us. We know that despite the degradation of the river, the Mauri of the river lives. For me, as long as the water flows, the Mauri can sustain life. However, what we have seen is the rapid decline in the life forms it can sustain because of runoff from farms, discharge from industry, stormwater, sewage, and other things. The most obvious is the loss of kai, which we will come to over the page. Go to the next slide. So the next slide is about huanga kai, or food collection. And just a quote from one of our whānau members, all we've got left now is eels. All the other kai has disappeared. So when we say that, if we look after the river will sustain us. If we can't actually get kai out of the river, then in actual fact, that's one of its roles, which is disappearing. Huanga kai refers to the places where food was produced or collected. And there are tikanga associated with huanga kai, harvest methods, quota, and the care to be taken of the huanga kai habitat. All are part of the traditions and behaviours related to gathering food. So the fact that we can't gather kai to the extent that we used to is something which causes great sadness for our whānau, especially in times where they can't actually provide kai themselves. The river has always been the place where they could go before industrialisation to get healthy food, in actual fact. So, we feel very deeply that that role of providing kai has almost entirely disappeared. And if we go over the page to Waahi Tapu, our sacred places. And as you know, Waahi Tapu are the markers on the landscape left to us by our tūpuna, and they contribute to and support the histories left to tangata whenua about a particular place or area. And Waahi Tapu can be urupa and pa sites. And special purpose areas, of course. Interestingly enough, Te Poia in her time lifted the tapu around the marae so everyone could move freely. As children, we had unlimited access to the river and its banks. And we see this even today. Our children have already started swimming in this swimming season. But our children are taught to respect the awa, and the awa will look after you. Pay homage to your tūpuna each time you go into the awa, and our children do this too today by patting your head with water and saying karakia. Be aware of the taniwha and be respectful and mindful of all. And that's really about being careful about how you use the river and being mindful that that you need to think about your safety when you're using the river, as our children do. We knew the river had the power to heal, but it also had the power to take life too. And so while our children are extensive users of the river every summer, it's almost entirely without mishap. And it's those teachings that we follow, and we've taught our children to follow, around doing karakia and being very mindful of and respectful of how you use the river. Muri ake nei, our future, just over the page. So I, on behalf of the Tūrangawae Trust Board and our community of 4,500 whānau members, have shared our cultural values with you and lay down the challenge to the Waikato District Council to acknowledge those values. And the introduction of an outstanding cultural landscape would have the ability to address our cultural values and give effect to Te Ture Whai Mana and see that the Waikato River is afforded the recognition it deserves. So thank you for listening to my kōrero this afternoon, and we're happy to answer any questions. Is that how it works?
Yep. That presentation can come down, Mr. Chair, if you want.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to add, Mr. Donald, or have you said it all before, as it were? I mean, entirely over to you.
No, I was going to confirm that I had said it all before, sir. We, Tūranga Waiwai, are in support of the Waikato Taino submission made on Thursday, and support that policy framework that provides the recognition that we believe the awa deserves. Tūranga Waiwai has been inputting and will continue to help with the overarching submission by Waikato Tainui. So it's really just full support of that technical evidence provided Thursday, and nothing else has changed. So, I mean, we're open to questions, and I'm sure Hirangi is the best person for some of these, but yeah, that's in terms of the technical inputs, we're just fully supportive of the Waikato Tainui position.
All right, thank you, Mr. Donald. That's helpful, and thanks very much for the presentation, Ms. Ramati. That was very helpful. I'll just see if the panel have some questions for you. Ms. Sedgwick, can I start with you, please?
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to thank you for your kōrero and to say that it added another dimension. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Marg?
Yeah, kia ora, Hirangi. Thanks for the presentation, fantastic. Can I just clarify, in that last slide, you referred to outstanding cultural landscape. And reflecting back on your original submission in 2019, you were referring to the Waikato River and obviously the outstanding natural feature and landscape. So can you just clarify the introduction of an outstanding cultural landscape, please? Just to remind me. So I'm not sure I heard Mr. Donald say that on Thursday.
So on Thursday, hopefully we communicated well enough, but with the outstanding natural landscape and the challenges we faced in that framework, we re-scoped out an outstanding cultural landscape. Right. And that was the talk we had around, the challenges around cultural values not being attributed the weight that we need in the assessment criteria used by council.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, Gavin. I thought that's what you were referring to as the assessment criteria that's been utilised versus what you'd like to see going forward.
Yep.
And more so
no
of mātauranga Māori.
Yep, thank you. Yep.
All right.
Ka pai. Thank you.
Ms. Gibb?
Kia ora. And thank you, Ms. Raumati, because it was very, very clear presentation and endorses what Waikato Tainui was saying. I have no questions, and I'm just thanking you for coming to the putting your submission to us. Thank you.
Mr. Kearney?
Yes, thanks, Ms. Ramati. That was good background stuff. Thank you. Mr. Donald, just as an overview, both the Trust and Waikato Tainui, they did they or did they not make a submission on the significant sites? Did they make a submission there?
We didn't submit specifically to that section. We thought we would focus on this and in particular the river. For a number of reasons, but this was the focus, and we didn't want to distract from what was the primary concern.
Yeah, and so the submission was directly on whether the river should be an outstanding natural feature or landscape. If we, as a panel, were to decide that the river is an outstanding natural feature or landscape, and the same planning provisions would apply as they do for other outstanding natural features and landscapes, would that satisfy the relief you're seeking?
Well, I think as you heard from CEO Donald Flavel, that the primary wish would be that the river could be deemed an outstanding natural landscape because it merges the two worlds together, and we're not still separating out the landscapes that are good enough to get up the framework weighting and the cultural landscape issue. So the ability to come into one was always Ms. Flavel's priority. And then we've moved to where we are because we didn't feel we were ever going to get over the line with the framework used. So it was always the priority to bring it in. We don't want to see it distinguished, to be honest, but we just felt we had to get to that point.
Is that what you're saying in 11.4 of your evidence there? I'm not sure whether you have it in front of you. Have you got it there? Just the last section there. Do you want to read it out?
11.4.
11.4.
11.4.
Yeah, 11.
Not 11.3, sir?
No, 11.4 on mine.
Starts with the ability of, that's correct?
That's it.
Sorry, I'm struggling. I've clearly got some numbering issues here because I don't have an 11.4.
Here, I'll read it to you. The ability of the Waikato District Plan to recognise the Waikato River as outstanding should not require the creation of a new title, which to some degree limits the recognition of the awa beyond cultural values. Other user groups may feel that their value for the Waikato River is not recognised. However, the mechanisms, including overlays and matters of discretion, mean the awa is provided with protections and weight equivalent to an outstanding natural feature or landscape. What did you mean by that?
Well, the original submission was obviously focused on being an outstanding natural feature landscape. We felt it warranted, and we still do.
Yeah.
But through the evolution of this process, we felt we were in a place where we couldn't get the weighting necessary to get it there. And then Mr. Coffin, having used other experiences, decided that potentially a cultural landscape was a good option. And it would also keep it at the same weight and provide the right recognition for it, and those protections that come with a potential overlay. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
no. I understand what you're trying to do. Is there anything? Well, you can comment on this scenario. If we decided as a panel that it was an outstanding natural feature and it qualified as being one, but we also said, well, it ranks up there, the same planning provisions will apply, but we'll call it a significant or an outstanding cultural landscape, because that's really where it gets across the threshold. Is that something that you would support, or would you rather have it called a like everything else, an outstanding natural feature or landscape?
Well, I guess the key point is it's getting that recognition. So if it was going to be an outstanding natural landscape, we would want the same protections in place. It's this differentiation that is the struggle.
No, it's not. It's not the not in terms of the planning provisions. The same would apply. It's really the title or the description of it.
Yeah, and I think Ms. Whakahaere made that comment. We're sort of arguing over terminology potential or over one word in the middle of three on Thursday. I'd have to go back to now that we've gone down the cultural landscape route, that became our focus, and some extra work has been requested of us, and some of that includes a comparison piece, and I think that could be quite valuable in comparing the protections that are placed between the two different processes.
Yeah. Okay. No, we'll look forward to seeing what comes out of that. Yeah. That's all I've got. Thank you.
So just to summarise that, you don't care what it's called. Well, you do care. You don't mind what it's called, provided that the recognition and the provisions are equivalent in status to the outstanding landscapes and or outstanding natural features. That's how I understood it from Thursday when I asked you that question.
And that's both where Ms. Flavel got to the other day, as far as I understood.
That's what I understood. And I just wanted to be clear. I suppose the other thing, have you had a chance, and perhaps I'll ask Ms. Raumati directly, have you had a chance to discuss with Mr. Donald where things were left on Thursday last in terms of the process going forward?
Not really. We've had a very short time to catch up today.
All right. Well, I won't go over it in great detail, but the panel indicated that it had, it was attracted, without having formed a final opinion, that the panel was attracted to the river being recognised somehow or other along the lines of what Mr. Donald and the tribe talked to us about on Thursday. As a consequence of that,
Right.
the staff and the tribe's advisors, primarily Mr. Donald, but I think maybe involving Ms. Whakahaere and others, we're going to go away and give some more thought to what this actually might look like on the ground. I mean, I'm paraphrasing that and simplifying it a fair bit, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you'd be supportive of that approach.
Yeah, well, we would be happy to work with them and understand what the implications of that are.
Yeah, okay, and that's the point. No, that's excellent. Thank you. So I have no further questions. Thank you. Thank you very much for this for the submission, and thank you for the presentation, which, as the other panel members have said, was very straightforward and very helpful. So we're grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for your time today. I did take you on a bit of a whirlwind journey from the 1500s, or from landing at Kawhia and from the 1500s through to 1921, and 100 years later, here we are. So thank you for your time today, and I hope you've got a really good understanding of Tūranga Waiwai Marae and the meaning of the river in our everyday lives. So kia ora mai tātou.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that brings us to the end of what we were needing to do this afternoon. It's a great photograph of your finger there, Mr. Donald, but it's gone now. Oh, he's gone, has he? I think he's gone completely. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of today. If we can perhaps, we're going to adjourn now. If we can turn the recording off, please. We don't need that on anymore.